the 7 Christians who will be cast into hell. The Christian who lost his faith. At the beginning of his journey, this Christian seemed fervent, someone who lived his faith intensely and dedicated his life to the love of God. However, over time, he began to question his beliefs, allowing doubts to corrode his soul. The faith that was once unshakable became fragile and eventually was abandoned. He traded fervor for apathy, allowing worldly concerns to overshadow his connection with the divine. This is the Christian who, despite knowing the way of truth, let his faith fade away, succumbing to the pressures of the world and distancing himself from God. In the end, without the faith that once sustained him, he finds himself lost, and the fate that awaits him is dark. The Christian who loved the world more than God. Loving the world more than God is a fatal mistake for any Christian. This second Christian, despite professing his faith and living within the community of believers, was seduced by riches, power, and the pleasures the world offers. He began to place his personal ambitions above the love of God, forgetting the teachings of Jesus. The Bible is clear when it warns us about the impossibility of serving 2 masters. This Christian, by choosing the world and its pleasures, opted to stray from the path of salvation. His faith was relegated to the background, and the consequences of this choice manifest in eternal separation from God, a tragic fate that could have been avoided if he had kept his priority in divine love. The Christian who judges others. This Christian considered himself righteous and superior to others, using his faith as a weapon to judge and condemn. Instead of practicing the love and compassion taught by Jesus, he placed himself on a pedestal, pointing out the faults of others and forgetting to look at his own. The Bible teaches us not to judge, so that we will not be judged, but this Christian ignored this teaching, believing that his righteousness gave him the right to condemn the Samaritans and anyone else who did not follow his standards. Arrogance and pride took over his heart, distancing him from the true purpose of the Christian faith. In the end, he will face divine judgment, where his lack of love and empathy will condemn him to a fate he never imagined for himself. The Christian who practices hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is one of the sins most condemned by Jesus. This Christian, who presents himself as devout and faithful, actually lives a double life. He talks about love, faith, and God, but his actions do not reflect these words. Outwardly, he seems to be an example of a Christian, but inside, his heart is full of deceit. He deceives everyone around him but forgets that God knows the deepest secrets of the human heart. The hypocrisy of this Christian will lead him to a terrible fate, as he has betrayed not only the trust of others but also that of God. In the final judgment, he will be exposed, and his duplicity will condemn him to a place where God's love and light cannot reach. The Christian who despises love for his neighbor. Loving your neighbor as yourself is one of the greatest commandments of Jesus. However, this Christian chose to ignore this teaching, living selfishly and indifferent to the needs of others. He attended church, read the Bible, but did not allow God's love to transform his heart. When he saw a Samaritan or anyone else in need, he turned his face away, justifying his actions with empty excuses. He forgot that true faith is manifested through love for others. In the end, this Christian will be judged not by the words he spoke, but by the actions he failed to take. His lack of compassion will distance him from the presence of God, and he will be condemned for not loving as he should have. The Christian who abused God's grace. God's grace is an invaluable gift, offered to all who believe. However, this Christian abused this grace, believing that he could sin freely and then simply ask for forgiveness. He lived a life of indulgence, convinced that God's love was enough to cover all his errors without requiring real changes in his life. The Bible warns against those who treat God's grace as a license to sin. This Christian deceived himself, believing that he could fool God with his excuses and empty promises. In the end, he will discover that God's grace is not an excuse for sin, but a call to transformation and holiness. His refusal to live according to this call will lead him to a destiny of eternal separation. the Christian who did not persevere until the end. The Bible is clear in saying that those who persevere until the end will be saved. This Christian began his journey of faith well, but along the way, he was overcome by difficulties and challenges. Instead of strengthening his faith, he gave up, allowing despair to take hold of his heart. He abandoned the race before reaching the finish line, forgetting that the crown of life is given only to those who remain faithful until the end. This Christian, who was once fervent, now finds himself lost, separated from God's love by his own choice not to persevere. On the day of judgment, he will face the consequences of his abandonment, being cast into hell for not maintaining his faith until the end. It is essential that each of us examine our own life and faith, always seeking to live according to God's precepts. Are we truly firm in our faith? Are we living out love for our neighbor? What have we done to keep our faith alive and active? These questions are fundamental to our Christian journey. Did you like this content? Then don't waste time. Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and leave your like. Share this message with your friends and family, and together we will grow in faith and knowledge.